History is full of rich connections to God and the great outdoors He created for us. I'm on a mission to share these experiences with my children, alongside other fathers who want to introduce their sons and daughters to the beauty and bounty of the world where we are blessed to walk with our Heavenly Father in His garden. My name is Jacob Whitley. This is Fathers and the Great Outdoors.
I pinch it. Now open the bail. Good job. Now cast it out there into the yard. Good job. Now close the bail. Close the bail. And reel it in.
This is easy.
You got it?
Yeah.
You like it?
Yeah.
You're a big boy now.
Yeah.
Fishing like daddy.
I totally did it.
You totally did it.
Welcome to Fathers in the Great Outdoors. If you want to support this content, as always, you can visit the website and check out any of our merchandise, like this hat here. We also have some just fun camping and fishing gear as well. Today we have Steven Ziegler, and how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
So you were just telling me you just got back from your daughter's basketball game?
Yeah, it was a fun game. My kids are in sports. They hunt. You know, I love doing a lot of things with my kids, like my parents did with me. And so it's, you know, whether it's in the woods or it's on the court, it's a lot of fun.
Right. Always doing something outside then?
Oh yeah. We're always outside. Disc golf, camping, hunting, basketball, baseball. Always outside.
How did you get started? Is that something you grew up with as well?
Yeah. So actually, it's kind of a crazy story because my grandma taught me how to shoot guns. She taught shooting safety for 4-H, and then she taught us how to shoot. My grandpa and my dad would take me out hunting, and it was just it started there from a very young age.
Yeah. Okay. So it was mostly your grandparents then?
Yeah, well, it was my parents too, but my grandma was the one who she taught this because we did a lot of hunting, but we started very young. Like I shot my first deer, I believe I was 10. Groundhogs were like 8, so we had to take the 4-H shooting safety before we were really allowed to do much hunting. So my grandma, like it was just drilled into us all the safety stuff from the time we were 5-6 years old. It was talking about gun safety because we're always around guns, and so you know, which is good, but you got to be careful, especially with kids.
So it sounds like obviously big gun family. What about the fishing side growing up?
So it's kind of crazy. I went on fishing on Lake Erie with my grandpa, my dad, and my great uncle, and we did that a lot as well since we're here in Ohio. And actually, we used these fishing lures when we were kids, Delong Lures, and it was actually the guy who invented the rubber worm for fishing. And he lives right down the road from where I currently live. And 3 years ago, we actually bought Delong Lures, brought it back, and now we own a social media content creation business through Facebook mostly, and Delong Lures. So it's a really cool business. I got catalogs dating back into the 40s, original prototypes. And so, you know, fishing, I did more hunting than fishing growing up, but I was always passionate about both. And now I get to be in an industry where we're making content for hunting, and I own a fishing lure company. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for me.
Yeah. What is it? How are you with the content of hunting? What are you using? I guess, are you trying to monetize that as well?
Yeah. So we actually started. It was so my grandma that taught me how to hunt. We got some cameras. This was about 10 years ago now, and we were trying to make rabbit hunting YouTube videos, and we did, and we started a Facebook page. But you know, like rabbit hunting on YouTube, we were getting like 10, 20,000 views. We were pretty happy with it. Then I took my grandma out hunting because she took me out as a kid, and she was 80 years old. She shot a deer. I recorded the whole thing. It went viral. Ted Nugent shared it. Kendall Jones shared it. Yeah, it really took off. And we kind of learned from there that people took our video and embedded it on their website, and they made all the money and we did all the work. So we're like, oh, let's just start a website. And from there, we grew social media pages, and we got to a point where we were doing 1 to 2 million people a month to the website. I mean, I read every single hunting, fishing, public lands bill passed by Congress since Teddy Roosevelt. I read every Teddy Roosevelt book. I obsessed over the content for years, and we kept getting more and more people to the website and grew the pages more and more. And then from there, Facebook's algorithms kind of changed. You couldn't really make money on blogs anymore. So we actually that's when we bought Delong Lures. And then Facebook came back to us, and they have a creator program for like mid-level creators like us. And we have the Hunting News, thehuntingnews.com was the website. We don't have that anymore. But we had like Rack Junkies and the Sportsman Party, and then my personal page, Steven Ziegler on Facebook. And so we're on like a bonus program for that, where they pay us for the content we make on Facebook now.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And then I can take my kids out hunting, and we can use the money to do new hunts. We're actually doing a duck hunt out on Lake Erie next week with my business partner. His name's Aaron Futrell. He's written some books. He's a Purple Heart veteran. And so he works with an organization called the Fallen Outdoors. So we're going out with, we're paying for a hunt for 4 wounded veterans, and then me and my cousin. So we're going to film content and make a bunch of videos, and we make pictures and memes and stuff like that too. And it's allowed us to do what we love, and then also be able to give back and make money in the process. I'm a very lucky person with all the opportunities I've been able to have in my life.
Yeah, that's one of the really awesome things about I guess when it comes to like the social media or just media in general and the outdoors, is it has such a communal vibe to it. Because I used to work in Los Angeles, and that was extremely cutthroat. And unless you were best friends with the higher ups, nobody actually, you'd be kicked to the curb kind of thing. So there's a huge contrast, and it was a huge appeal. And kind of why I wanted to get into doing this podcast is kind of like, hey, if I could figure out a way to do some of these dream hunts and have it funded essentially. So that's kind of the background of I guess my motivation, and then of course just bringing my kids up in the outdoors as well. But I mean, yeah, that sounds like a lot of success on your part, being able to put all that together, and an exciting duck hunt, it sounds like, coming up.
Yeah, and we get to do a lot of different hunts. We're going to do a pheasant hunt the week after that. We're doing basically a hunt every single week now, and it's really crazy because when you sent me the message about this, about kids and the outdoors and the faith-based stuff, it really brought back a memory for me. When I was a kid, one of my favorite hunting memories was my grandpa. He took me out trapping. Like we ran a trap line. And it was like, trapping, like it's so exciting. Like, you got to wait till the next day or a couple of days. You want to go back and see if there's anything there. And you check them every 24 hours. So my grandpa took me, and I remember we have this tree on my parents' property down in Southern Ohio. It takes about 5 full-grown men to reach around. It's this huge oak tree. And he taught me, and I think I was 8 years old. I was about the age of my son. And he took this like little sapling, and he like cut all the branches off. And he goes, I'm going to show you how to make a snare. So he pulled down a snare. He did the whole thing. He put a bunch of corn all the way around, and he took a stick. I'll never forget this. He took a stick, and he goes, that squirrel's going to come out to this corn, and it's not inside the circle where it's going to get caught, but it's going to eat the corn. It's going to go back. He's like, this is kind of like sin. This is kind of like, this is temptation. And he said, get a little closer, a little closer, a little closer. I'll never forget when he finally tapped it with that stick, and it just flung the stick in the air, and it just went like crazy. And he's like, that's what happens with sin and all that. Now at 8 years old, like I remember that story now, but at 8 years old, what I took from that is, oh dude, I'm going to show my friend how to make a snare. And so we went back and we started making all these snares, ended up catching all the neighborhood cats and got in a bunch of trouble. But it was a fun experience where he took me into the outdoors and taught me a lesson where like my attention was so on what he was saying because he related it to something that I was interested in.
Right.
And so now I get to do that same thing with my kids, with kids in Sunday school. I do that. In fact, I teach middle school boys for Sunday school at the church. Actually, me and my wife met there, got married there. I take them down to my shop at DeLong. I let them go down and make lures. And I tell them, hey, look, you guys read, I give them a commentary and a Bible. I say, here, read this chapter, come back, you teach me the lesson. And next week we're going to go make fishing lures. And then the week after that, we'll go to a pond and we'll go fishing. And so these kids, a lot of them have never been hunting or fishing ever. And I get to take them out, and then they're reading the Bible. They're super interested. They're inviting their friends, and they get to go out and actually sit there, catch fish. A couple of them, they've never caught a fish before. And so, you can use the outdoors and those lessons for especially young boys. I mean, listen, I'm a boy, you know, I know girls are interested too, but I know especially with young boys, they get so interested in that kind of stuff that it's a powerful tool if you can really invest in some other people with the skills and stuff that we've been taught in the outdoors from the time we were kids.
Right. And I bet that story from your grandfather, the first time you did slip up, or maybe a couple times down the road, I'm sure that popped up in your head where you actually were able to relate it.
Yes, it did. And, it was one of those things where it really didn't even, it's one of those things that it was weird because when I was a kid, I remember it and I remember learning all about it and everything. But it wasn't honestly until I got a little older and I looked back and I went, oh, I remember what Grandpa was saying now, because I'm always by that tree. I'm always hunting there. And he passed away when I was in high school. And it was actually after high school where it really clicked for me. And it's crazy how something I learned when I was 8, when you're a teenager, you go, wait, you know what? Grandpa taught me about this. And it was actually years later where it really impacted me more.
Yeah, that's usually when it picks up. Because I remember talking to my own dad, somewhat recently. I've been kind of just, I read through the New Testament front to back, and now I'm going through the Old Testament. And it's something I tried several years ago, but I had a hard time getting into it. And now I find it fascinating. And he said, that's because now you're ready for it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, like
Yep.
At a certain point in your life is when you're able to reflect and actually make it relatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you never know when that's going to be. My parents actually sent me to Europe for 3 months when I was 15, to Moldova, between Romania and Ukraine. And then again, when I was 17, yeah, I've been, like I said, very fortunate. There were missions trips. I lived in people's homes, worked in camps, all that kind of thing. Africa, South America. I've gotten to travel all over the world. And those lessons that you learn, you don't even realize how important they are till you become an adult. And you're like, oh, wow, like that was so helpful for me. At the time, I was a 15-year-old boy. I was like, I'm not leaving. What are you talking about, going to Moldova? I was interested in girls, not in going on a missions trip for 3 months in a place where my bathroom was a hole in the ground. Of course not. But it ended up being an awesome thing. I loved it. And I learned so much from it. And now as an adult, that has shaped who I am today, from being able to go around the world and see those things. And now actually my brother, who went with me, he leaves next year. He's actually going to be going to Africa as a missionary full time. They sold their house, him and his wife, they sold everything. And they're actually going to Malawi, where I've been. Actually, our whole family's been there numerous times to be missionaries.
Very cool. So is that, are you still active when it comes to mission trips?
Yes and no. So the last one I went on was right before COVID. My dad just called me up and was like, hey, I need you to come to Africa and put a roof on a house. There's a new missionary coming over. Can you come? I'll pay for your plane ticket. So that was the last one I've done. I'm 36 now, so it's a little harder with, owning multiple businesses. I've gotten involved in crazy opportunities with running political campaigns and stuff like that. And so with my schedule being real busy and having the kids and everything, it makes it tougher. However, I did tell my daughter, I said, listen, when your uncle is over there in Africa, I'm sending you over there for a summer. Just like I got to go on those trips, I want my kids to be able to experience that as well. So not as much anymore, but it's not because I don't want to. It's a time issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you were before you even had kids, when you were considering creating a family, was it a thought in your head that you wanted to eventually introduce your own kids to the outdoors?
Oh, absolutely. My son's name's Hunter. So it was always, they all grew up around it from the time that you're old enough to be around it. My parents have a place in Southern Ohio. They got 100 acres, 6-bedroom house, and it's the hunting cabin. And, my daughter, I shot a 10-point buck. Like, she was exactly 1 week old, and we took her down there for the extra weekend of gun season. And I actually got a buck that day. So she's been around it since she was 10. And in fact, there's actually a really popular meme on Facebook that goes around. It goes around all the time. It's a little kid in a car seat and like a buck laying in front of him in a great big giant buck. And it's joking around, but it says, landowners be like, my son shot his first deer. That's actually the meme that always goes viral on Facebook, is the picture that we took of my son when he was 1 month old. So, they're around it from the time they're born.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So what was kind of the first things they were doing? Was it hunting or fishing?
So the first things that they do is typically that they're going out in the woods with me, like they're walking around. So I'm like my daughter, I took her out hunting. I mean, she was probably 4 or 5. Now I from the very beginning I've said I'm not going to just put my daughter in front of a deer and let her just squeeze the trigger, right? I want them to earn it and realize how hard it is and get all of the lessons that I learned from it. So like I would take her out and it was more of us walking into the woods together and just you'd like walk in and you're talking, you're never going to see anything. And I think she had to been 4 or 5. She was real young. And I had a little crossbow in a stand and we would practice shooting in the backyard and everything. And I took her out and I shot a real nice buck that day. So I was kind of done with hunting for the year. I can only shoot one buck. I already had a couple deer that year. Mm-hmm. So I took her out and we're sitting in the blind and there's a path that comes 10 yards in front of us. And she knew how to shoot. And I was like, I didn't want her to shoot anything, but I wanted to spend time with her. I'm telling you, it was 10 minutes after we're into the blind. All of a sudden, I hear something walking straight up the path to us. Just the footprints coming. I'm like, oh, that's no way. Is my daughter really going to have an opportunity to shoot a deer at 5? This is too, like, I was like, I can't believe this. And she just looks at me and goes, hey, Dad, you hear that? And then you just hear the deer just run away. And I'm like, oh, yep, heard it. I heard it. Now that she's about to be 14, we can laugh about that story. But, it was good that she got to, see some deer and walk in the woods and just it's more of a time thing at that point. I like to get them out. And then typically we'll do some bluegill fishing about that age as well.
Okay. I'm assuming you use the lures from the shop.
Yeah, well, now we do. In fact, I just bought the business 3 years ago, but before that, we bought the Delong Lures when we were kids. That's how we found the business. It was just because I used them and I liked them, and we were looking for them online, and the business had shut down, and we called the old owner, and one thing led to another. We bought it. So now, yes, now my son's gotten to use them from the time he was 5 and make his own and go out and catch some fish with them.
Yeah, I've always wondered if. For my kids, my oldest just turned 6. My daughter will be 4 in about a month, and then my youngest is 1, so he's got a while. But I thought about maybe just like seeing if they could handle the cold and sitting quietly and just take a camera with a good lens on it, opposed to trying to shoot something while I'm up there, just so they can kind of experience the morning waking up and see how long they can sit there for.
Yeah, it was really cold here in Ohio this last week. I mean, the wind chill was in the single digits, and I took my son out, and he's 8, and he's like, Dad, my face hurts. I'm like, I know, that's the fun part. And he went out with me. We sat in the tree. We saw one. We got to see a deer, which was fortunate with how cold it was. And they don't sit very long, but it's more about the time that you're investing in them at that age. And I love doing it. I absolutely love going out hunting with them. I'd rather them shoot a deer than me shoot a deer. My daughter shooting a deer, she was like, that evening we went back out and she's like, all right, Dad, well, if there's a big buck, I'll shoot it. If there's a doe, you shoot it. I'm like, if there's a doe, you can shoot it too. Like, I'd rather watch you shoot another one than get one myself. And I never really understood that till I had kids, and I actually got them out there and I watched the joy that they had. And then you're like, oh, I would much rather watch this happen than shoot one myself. So that's kind of where I'm at in life now, is just that real fun age where they're learning and you get to spend a lot of time with them and see that excitement.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus, is kind of letting the kids get their stuff done before beginning your own season. And if you don't get one, you don't get one.
Yeah.
I think I heard one dad mention that he wanted, they both had an opportunity, he and his son, with a crossbow. So he wanted to get his first just because he wanted to guarantee that they had meat. And then another doe did show up, but it was the son's first shot at it, and he missed. He thinks he might have been looking at the wrong site, but other than that, it seems like everybody else is always focused on weeks on end getting their kids' stuff in. I even read a book by a gentleman, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he basically decides, I think it's like November, he just doesn't hunt because his kids are going to visit his property, and that it's theirs to hunt for that time.
Yeah, and the thing is with my daughter, she's been, like you mentioned earlier, how much they've been around it. My daughter started helping me process the deer meat when she was so young. She had a plastic knife that she was pretend cutting the meat with, and I'd give her a little mallet to pound my deer jerky meat that I was making, just so that she was doing something. So she's been making deer jerky with me since she was like 3 years old. And so now this is the first one. She She shot it, she tracked it, she gutted it out, she's skinned it, quartered it. She'll cook it 100% field to table. She's going to do all of this one on her own. The only thing that I'm really like, I help coach her through some of this stuff, but she's doing every bit of it herself, 100% field to table this time. So that's something that's also been real important with our families. We were taught how to process them. That's kind of a dying art now because, you know, it doesn't cost that much money. You can take it down to the processor and have them do it. But I want my kids to learn how to do that as well. And when they go to school with that deer jerky that they shot and they process it, it's such a cool thing. And, you know, at that point, you're always the cool kid when you have the jerky, you know?
Yeah, that's actually something that I've started doing myself. That as far as the jerky goes, where I just put it on the smoker and it turned out pretty good. Doing my own little recipe for it. But yeah, I just because there is big convenience with the processor, especially when you have such a busy schedule, it helps to be able to just like. You get your deer, you get a field dress, and then drop it off and pick it up later. For the most part, I think the big... Because I don't necessarily, when I have things dropped off, unless it's like I want this whole thing ground and just take care of that for me, it's more that I just want it freezer ready, and then I'll actually prepare it afterwards kind of a thing. So that, as far as... not wanting to let it sit too long because it takes a while. I'm very meticulous, so it takes a while for me to process the entire deer. I'm not really sure where I was going with that, but
Oh, I'm the exact same way though. I spend way too much time doing it, and I'm so busy that sometimes I'm like, man, I kind of want to take it to the processor because I've actually never taken a full deer to a processor before, but like I've considered it. I'm like, man, I might do it because I'm so busy, but I can set aside the time because I'm doing it with my kids. And, you know, I mean, we were just yesterday, we finished processing the one deer. So we got meat in the freezer, and then we're going to go on a pheasant hunt. And, you know, my daughter, this is actually kind of funny. When COVID happened, they had a bunch of, like, every kid was in school at home on their computer. And I would go out duck hunting we'd float the rivers and, you know, and then shoot the ducks. And I brought some ducks back. And my daughter, oh man, that was 2020. So, I mean, she's like 9-10 years old, like third grade maybe, or third or fourth grade. And she's on her little Zoom call for school. And I brought a duck. She went out and got the duck and then held it up in front of the class to her teacher. Like, look what my dad got. And I'm like, I'm going to get an email from the teacher. Fortunately, that teacher was cool and hunted. But, you know, and then for lunch that day, me and her processed that duck. So she can skin, cut up ducks, geese, turkey, deer. She did my bear, helped with the bear, parts of the bear. So pretty much everything. And I find that to be a lot of fun to do with her. She really enjoys cooking wild game. She likes cooking. So when she gets to cook something that she was able to take herself, it's even more fun.
Yeah. What age did you say that she started processing with you?
Well, she was sitting there with a plastic knife and a little mallet when she was 3. So, and she would put all the seasoning on the deer jerky. Yeah. And then just slowly through the years, I let her do a little more and a little more and a little more.
How old is she now?
She's about to turn 14 now.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, it's definitely one of the things because like I have all these aspirations to do specific. I'm somebody that likes to do things collaboratively. So I'm always trying to get like, hey, let's go duck hunting or something like that. It's always tough to get friends to go. So I'm looking forward to the day that I can wrangle my kids into it.
Oh, it's awesome. I took my daughter out rabbit hunting last year. She shot her first rabbit last year too, which is so hard because I mean they're just full on running past you and you got to make that shot. Mm-hmm. And she was able to hit the shot. I was probably more excited than her, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I imagine. So what, I guess between your two kids, do they have any kind of like bucket list hunts that they want to do?
Yeah. So my son, he's young enough where he just wants to get a deer right now. That's, you know, he's gone out with me. He's practiced shooting a crossbow. Cause I'm either a crossbow or a recurve guy. I don't really hunt with compounds, but, my son, he wants to do what I'm doing, but he can't pull back a recurve that's strong enough to kill a deer yet. So he's working on the crossbow. My daughter, we've talked about an elk hunt. That's one that for her senior year, I want to take her on an elk hunt. That's kind of the bucket list hunt for us right now.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. What kind of elk?
I don't know. I've looked. My wife's uncle actually lives in Nevada, and he's killed a couple of bulls over 400 inches, and he goes to Idaho and hunts, and he gets over the counter tags, archery tags. He kills elk every year, and he's always inviting me. So anywhere, if I can just get somewhere to be able to do an elk hunt with her, I honestly I don't care as long as it's an elk and we can get a tag for it. It's more about the time, but I would like to just any state I can get. I'd like to go to. And that it's actually interesting you bring that up because there was actually a bucket list hunt I've had my entire life. And my dad, who he's the one who sent me to Moldova. Him and my mom were part-time missionaries to Africa, Moldova. He traveled the whole world on mission trips. He actually passed away a year and a half ago from multiple myeloma. He had cancer. It was he died at 57, so fairly young. But we had always talked about going on a bear hunt. Me and I have two brothers, and we talked about this from the time I was a kid, and we never got to go. My parents were very well off. Then, financial troubles happened and we couldn't go. And then they were kind of well off there at the end, and he had cancer and it wasn't gone, but it was in remission for a little while and it was starting to come back, and we had scheduled a bear hunt in North Carolina. And we were able to go, me, my dad, and my two brothers to North Carolina. I shot a 550-pound black bear. He shot a 300-pound bear. My brother's was 300. My other brother's was about 200. So all four of us were able to get bears. And we went on this trip, all of us together. And we knew the cancer was coming back. But he had zero pain the entire time we were there. He had no symptoms of the cancer, even though it was coming back the entire time we were on this trip. And as soon as we got back is when everything turned for the worst. I mean, it was just from there on out, it was just a lot of pain and suffering for the next couple of months. But we were able to do that last hunt, and it was like God brought every single thing together for us. It was, I can't even express how perfectly the hunt went, where it was from every aspect of driving down there and spending all the time together, the taxidermy work, the bears that we got. I mean, just the camp we went to, everything worked out so perfectly for the last hunt that I got to have with my dad. And, I hope to be able to make a memory like that with my daughter. It makes me kind of my bucket list hunt for me that I want to do with my kids is I want to go down to North Carolina with each one of them and do a bear hunt the same way I did with my dad. So that's more of my bucket list hunt with them, even though they have their own thing they want. But it was a very special hunt for me. Where in
North Carolina was that?
So I wish I could remember the county. It was right next to Hyde County, which is super like well known. There's an outfitter, Dare to Hide. There's like super well known. They're on all the TV shows and stuff. We were literally neighbors to them. Was the guy we went with, and like I said, mine was 550 pounds. So
yeah, it sounds like a real blessing to be able to kind of have that trip with being so seamless and. Hopefully he, I guess, was honest and that it was painless and everything went smoothly.
Yeah. And, it's, looking back how I got involved in hunting with my grandpa and my dad, and, my grandpa passed away when I was in high school, but, this is something that, as a kid, I mean, technically you're not supposed to do it, but when I shot my first deer when I was 10, my grandpa actually left us down at their place, me and my older cousin. He was 13 or 14 at the time. And they gave us a crossbow and told us to go out hunting. And I don't think that technically that was technically legal, but, back in those days, like nobody really cared. You would go out hunting. Like I said, we took shooting safety courses, all that kind of stuff. And when I actually shot my first deer was with my cousin in the at the cabin before cell phones. They didn't know, we had a cell phone. We had to walk 2 miles up the hill in order to be able to call them to let them know we shot a deer and didn't really know what to do. But, I started hunting with my dad, and, my dad hunted with me till the end. And and I'm glad I get to share that same type of experience with my kids now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned You're more of a recurve than compound, but you like crossbow. Is the compound just too close as far as mechanics go to a crossbow, or is there a specific reason?
No, it's just that I was using a crossbow and then I shot a deer and it actually was kind of just too easy. Like I got really good at getting, these nice 3.5, 4.5 year old bucks around, shooting some big bucks, and I wanted more of a challenge. And I kind of tend to be an extreme type of person. So instead of just doing the normal thing and going to a compound, I just switched to a recurve. And I got to not kill a lot of deer for a little while, but the challenge of it, because you got to get them so close, and I was only after a mature buck, and it was I know people, I don't care what people shoot, but for me that was what I wanted to do, and it made me a much better hunter because I had to focus on so many details, my setups, how to get deer in closer, and when you don't kill deer, it teaches you how to get deer in closer. I've learned way more from not killing deer than killing deer because you get to watch them, you get them in close, and those years of hunting, I obsessed over the podcasts, I obsessed over reading books. I tend to take things to an extreme, and that's the only reason I didn't use a comp. I've still to this day never killed a deer with a compound. I've only killed them with crossbows and recurves. And then I like to point that out to people on social media that complain about crossbow hunters. I'm like, oh yeah, you guys with your training wheels, and it's all a joke. But at the same time, it's hey, I'm using a recurve, and I'll post a picture of me with a deer with a crossbow, and then oh, you're cheating, and then you post a picture of you with the recurve, like no, you're cheating. Yeah, it's good fun on social media, but I always find it kind of silly that people complain about what others are using or complain about what deer they're shooting. Do what you want as long as it's legal and ethical.
Yeah. There's a lot of people on social media that I think are just trying to get a rise out of people too.
Yeah, and I get it. It's social media. It can be fun. I a little bit, to be honest, I'm a little guilty of that too because I post my recurve and my recurve kill, and then I'm like, yeah, you guys are the cheaters. But it's I'm joking around, but at the same time, I'm a little guilty of it sometimes.
Yeah. Is so are you mostly doing like video content, or I want to say I saw you well, I know you said you did blogs. Are you still doing blogs?
No, we stopped doing blogs. Like I do blogs for the fishing stuff because SEO work that I do. But we stopped doing that because we couldn't really make money on it. And Facebook pays us directly, so if we make videos, or we'll take pictures and make memes, new types of memes out of them, or we're doing like some cooking videos now. We're starting to do more of the cooking stuff because that's what we did before. We did like what was it, squirrel tacos and rabbit salad sandwiches, stuff like that. That people like to see those videos and how we process different animals and how we turn them into food, and it tends to do really well on social media. So
Yeah.
Any hunt we go on, we're gonna show people how we're when we're hunting the animals. We're gonna do some silly content with it, and then we're gonna show some cooking videos and stuff like that as well. The whole process.
Okay. So, but you said you do written blogs for the fishing?
Yes, yeah, we still do some writing with the fishing stuff. It's not as much as we used to. Like I used to write an article every day. Now it's like one a week, and it's more around selling the fishing lures. So it's more about our products and things like that.
Just talking about the useful, like when to use what where kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, it's that the history of DeLong. I mean, it's a cool company because it's been around since 1946. So there's a lot of things to write about that, and a lot of times I'll get people asking me questions about it, and I'll post articles of like I have catalogs from the 40s, 50s, 60s. I have original prototype molds, so I'll take a picture of them and I'll write about it and explain all the cool stuff we have in our shop. I've got like 10,000 molds that came with this business. I mean, I have fishing lures I could make. I don't even make a lot of the fishing lures yet because we just don't have the time and the marketing to be able to sell all of the things we have. So I do a lot of different things because actually David DeLong left like a ton of his old like notes, and there was a bunch of pro staffers that I have personal handwritten notes from professional anglers back from like the 60s and 70s when it first became like a thing to sponsor anglers on the water. I have their like personal handwritten notes on how they use different lures in different places. So I'm actually, that's the articles I'm going to be working on this week.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's good content. um, so, I guess circling back to the kids, and you mentioned that you're excited about kind of doing what your grandfather did as far as relating the outdoors to life lessons. Is there anything specific like that that comes to mind that really stuck out for them?
Yeah. So for one, it was teaching them how to make a snare, but when they get a little older, because I got in so much trouble from doing that, I'm like, all right, I'll wait till you're, a little older. But yeah, a lot of it is the amount of hard work that it takes. And this goes back to what I was saying about how I didn't want to just put my kids in front of a deer and let them pull the trigger, because we have really good hunting property in Southern Ohio. Like there's a lot of deer there. I've been hunting it my whole life. If I really wanted to, I could teach my 5-year-old how to shoot and put them in front of it. And, if I wanted them to have to run trail cameras. So it's hard work. It's, looking at the trees. So the big oak tree that I'd mentioned earlier that takes like 5 full-grown men to reach around. It's, you go out there and look at it and you show, like, you explain, like, hey, look how that branch sticks off of that tree. Like, it doesn't, like, humans can't make like a metal structure that would just hold up like that. There's got to be all sorts of supports and everything. And so you explain like how a lot of like how you can see God through the creation, and like I said, hard work was a big thing for my dad. So that's something that we talk about as well. You're going to earn this. And then, dragging in the deer and processing it and showing thanks for all that kind of stuff. Those are a lot of the lessons that my daughter's learning now, and my son as well.
Yeah, that's a cool analogy with the tree. Actually, just for some reason, it popped into my head is the one that Flick does in Bug's Life about the seed becoming the tree.
Yep.
So I guess using going into that a little more, where would you say you find God in the outdoors?
It's, my life is so hectic, and so it's, I have multiple businesses. The political stuff I got into, running campaigns and everything, lots of pressure, and you meet a lot of people, and it seems like your life is going a million miles an hour. And during this last campaign, I was a campaign manager for a congressional race, so I was very stressed, very with running businesses, with having kids, and my wife was like, "You need to go hunting. You need to get out in the woods, relax." Take a deep breath, get out there, and it doesn't even matter if you kill anything. Get out in the woods, take a day, go hunting. And I guess that's probably the thing that, and you don't really realize that when you're a kid. How I remember as a kid thinking like, man, how do they sit so long? And then now, once you're an adult, you can just sit back, look around, take a deep breath, enjoy God's creation, enjoy just watching the deer. I'm hunting in November during the rut, so I was, not. I was after a big buck, and so I got to watch some does and some smaller bucks, and you can see it in everything when you're out in the woods. And it's not all just about killing the animal, and that's, I guess, the thing that it's that, and then getting to watch my kids grow up in the woods and spending that time with them. It's not even necessarily the nature; it's the time with my children. I mean, God gave me those children, and it's. I just told my wife the other day, so I was like, "You want to pop out a couple more babies?" And she was just like, "Are you joking? Like, you want to change diapers in your 40s?" So I was like, "No, but I just love having kids." And I wish that the only regret I have, not the only regret, but like the main regret I have in life, I have 2 kids. I wish I'd had 4 or 5. And I guess I see God in them, and I see it in just my ability to relax when I'm in the woods.
Yeah, that's a big one. There was a sermon from my pastor a couple weeks back, basically talking about with people just fill in their schedule. They're always they pull up to a stoplight and they pull out their phone because they need to fill that. Everything needs to be productive every second. And he was saying you need to have that time with God, and it's not the 2 minutes you spend praying in the morning or something like that. He basically was saying you could spend an entire hour, and he was using a jar. Basically had 2 jars, and he had one that was all the sand had come to the bottom so you could see clear through the clear liquid, and another one that he shook up, and he said this is everybody's life, is you can't see through the liquid because it hasn't settled. And if you want to spend proper time with God, you need to stop and give it enough time to settle. So if you limit him to, okay, God, you have 15 minutes, what do you got to tell me? It's not going to settle enough, and you're not going to be able to hear him. So that actually spoke to me, and I was for a while getting distracted, even in the tree stand, because I'd listen to a podcast or a book or something, and I decided I'm going to go up there and do nothing. Well, actually, I brought my Bible, which I later decided even that was too much of a distraction. I just needed to sit there with nothing. I was having a very slow start to the year, and that was actually the first time I saw deers, because I took that time to reflect and just be with the woods, like I was the previous year, where I just kind of let the time go slower, because I'm watching the sunrise, rather than every time I look up, it's all of a sudden the darkness is gone and now the sun's up, and I probably didn't see something walk right in front of me.
Oh yeah, and that's my life. My life is so hectic and so busy, and it's just like there's times where you go a month and then you're like, oh wait, what am I doing? Like I've been going nonstop as hard as I can for so long, which is it's it's a strength and a weakness at the same time. It's your strengths can be weaknesses, and sometimes my ability to want to take things to the extreme can get in the way of some of the more important things in life, and I've got to be careful with that as well.
Yeah. And there's also the overworking yourself. Something that my father and I have been discussing a lot lately is the concept of the Sabbath, and how it's even in the Ten Commandments to on the seventh day to rest. When God did creation, He also rested on the seventh day, and it's not so much that it's like how like I'll use the Jewish culture as an example. They take it to the extreme where they won't even touch light switches and things like that. It's not so much that it's a rule to follow steadfast. It's a concept that we need rest because we will overwork ourselves. So we need to take that seventh day off and take a break and just shut it all up and relax. Because it's not good for us to be constantly working, which is difficult because in the American culture, work is kind of our whole mindset.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it definitely is, and that's definitely me. I was just talking to somebody the other day. They're like, "Oh man, you finished up the campaigns. You not working two jobs anymore." I'm like, the only time that I haven't worked two jobs in my adult life was the times when I was working three. So it's like what you're saying right now is like very true. And hunting in the woods is sometimes for periods it's like the only time where I'm settled down. But I have a really awesome wife, and on Sundays we have family dinners and we go to church, and that is a time where I fight not doing stuff sometimes, but if I can just get one day a week where I at least slow myself down, it does help.
Yeah. It's very tough too, because I was telling my life group the other day, if I like take a day, like a Saturday, and actually just like no chores or anything, just sitting around, maybe do a little TV or video games with the kids or something like that, I'll feel guilty basically that I didn't do anything productive. And there's no reason I should. It's just for some reason I've wired myself to think that something has to happen every day, and more than
Yep.
one thing.
Yeah, I get that struggle too.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to. I have to basically just kind of talk myself out of it, essentially.
I'll say this. I know that one lesson for me with my kids is I know that more is caught than taught. I heard that a long time ago, and that's something that like I know they watch me more than they listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're setting an example of never slowing down, like, teach your kids to work hard. I'm all about that. I push them, like especially my son, push them to work hard and everything. But if they see you when you're stressed, you know, spending money, or I think it was a Dave Ramsey quote if I'm correct about this, because he related money. If they see you when you're stressed, you spend money, they're going to spend money when they're stressed. If they see you pray when you're stressed, they're going to pray when they're stressed. They're going to watch you. So make sure that, and for me, there's times where I got to say, hey, you know what, we're going to sit down and we're going to do something as a family. And that's kind of camping for us now a little bit, since they've gotten older. Camping has really kind of been a good thing because there's there's no TV. We have our phones, but there's a lot of things we can slow things down and spend time with family. And it's about setting an example for them, more than just the things we tell them.
Yeah. When you're camping with your kids, or in like a tree blind, or sorry, in a blind in general, do they kind of, just being in that unplugged environment, do they open up about things they're struggling with or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate. My son, he's still 8, so 8-year-olds, they want to talk to you, and he's my son, looks up to me, and we play sports together and those sorts of things. My daughter, she's about to be 14, so she's a teenager. But I'm telling you, my favorite thing is she works for me. So like I'll take her down to the shop, and it's a half-hour drive there, and it's actually not a very good use of my time because it's a half-hour away. So it's a half-hour drive there, half-hour drive back. I'm working 10 or 12 hours. She started working with me at 12, so she can't work that many hours. She works 4 or 5 hours and starts to really slow down. So I got to wake up later, take her to the shop, but it's a half hour. We go there, we get donuts and a drink on the way. We talk the whole way there. She works, and then we come back. We talk the whole way back, and it's an inefficient use of my time, but it's my favorite time is driving to and from there. And so she really opens up, especially with that. And so you get to teach them life lessons about, hard work, and, about money, and about, how to run businesses and all those sorts of things. And, she gets to open up, and I'm really thankful that my daughter is a very nice child and, spends that time with me going to the shop every summer. When the summer's over now, like, it makes me sad because I'm like, man, I'm not going to get to work with her anymore. So I think that's actually the time when she opens up the most for me.
How often do you guys go camping?
So this typically we used a tent camp, and then we bought a camper this a year ago because my wife was like, she wanted to do more camping. We go in the spring a couple times, probably 7 or 8 times per year. And this next year, now that when you buy businesses and you take them off, you go through a time period where you're making less money and working crazy hours. And now that my kids are the perfect age to be able to like really enjoy having time with them, we're going to be doing more. We're going to go to Gatlinburg next year, and take some bigger like week-long trips this next year. Now that we have more time and money, so that this next year will be a lot more. This previous year, with me starting the campaigns in August, it cut into camping a little bit, but it was also a good time. I got to take my kids and to do some cool stuff with me there too. But the plan is to probably go, I would like to see us go 10 times per year camping, whether it's just a weekend trip or a longer trip.
Is any of that, I guess if it was just camping specific, but would it be going somewhere to do a hunt that's kind of off the beaten path?
So there will be, yes. So I have a 600-acre lease, and I'll take my camper down there, and I'm going to camp and take my daughter this year, and then come back and take my son for a few days too. Where it's in the middle of nowhere. It's not on our family hunting property, but we're going to do that. And then normally when we go camping, we'll actually go on fishing trips because it's over the summer when they're out of school. So they'll go to the shop. I let them make their own fishing lures, and I also let all the local kids make their own fishing lures too, because it's just they enjoy it so much. And then I will go on a fishing trip, whether it's muskie or bass or, panfish or whatever. We're going to do some trips. I got to go on a peacock bass trip this last year down in Florida. And this next year we're going to go back, and I'm going to take my daughter to do the same thing, to catch some peacock bass. So it's more fishing because it's during the summer, but we will do a trip or two during this winter to do a little deer hunting too. Very
cool. I've always wanted to do a trip like that for hunting, and figure out how to keep all the meat I get and stuff fresh, and cook some of it right there.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I want to do that. Like I said, with my daughter, we'll go down to that lease, and it's a ways away, and hopefully shoot a deer and be able to eat it for a couple days while we're on the trip.
Is there so you want to bring your daughter down to do additional peacock bass fishing? Is there any other kind of the same concept that the hunting, but certain fish or just fishing experience on the bucket list for either kid?
Yeah. So for me, owning a fishing lure company is kind of cool because there's people all over the country, and with the business being around since '46, there's tons of people that know about the lures. So there's people all over the country that are like, hey, you come here, I got a boat, I'll take you out. So there's a couple guys in Minnesota that have been like, hey, come on out, we use your musky lures, or down in Florida or Texas for they got some big bass down there in the Everglades. For me, I want to do a deep sea I want to do a Barracuda trip because people catch lures on my or catch Barracuda on my lures. So I know some guys, and I would like if I can work it out, I'll take both of my kids to do that. Those Barracuda they're pretty cool looking fish. So I think peacock bass was my number one, but now that I've caught them, I'd say Barracuda are what I want to go for this year.
Interesting. Is there a specific area that you want to go for that?
No, basically, I know a bunch of people that catch them in Florida, and so hey, take me wherever you can catch them. Like it's in southern Florida, so maybe even the Keys. I know some guys that fish out there, depending on when we're down there. But I guess, hey, I don't care where I catch them as long as I get to catch them.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of guys that this was probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, so I don't know if it's still the case. But when it was growing up in California, people would catch them all the time in the charters in the Pacific in Southern California. But they were always on the smaller side, so there was nothing they could keep. I don't know if that's your goal, if you just want to catch one, or if you're getting them to eat.
Yeah, the cool thing is like when you get to make your own lure and catch something with a lure you made, it's a little bit more fun. Mm-hmm. So I don't really care how big it is. I just want to catch one. Maybe if I've caught a bunch of them, I'd like to catch a bigger one. But for right now, I've seen them catch a couple of 44, 45-inch Barracuda out there. So if it was that big, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah. I can imagine, especially like if you're playing with the molds and you go down and catch something with that, that's got to feel good.
My son, he was 5 when we first bought the business. I had an old guy call me up and say, hey man, you got to use glow in the dark worms during the middle of the day in deep water. The fish just catch themselves. And I'm like, all right, you hear that a lot. So I came home and got my son, and I went to the shop. I said, hey, somebody told me we got to use glow in the dark worms. He's like, okay. So he went and made a glow in the dark worm. We went out fishing. It was his first cast, deep water during the day, just like this guy told us. And I thought he was just stuck in weeds, and he's just reeling and just pull and drag. But he just kept, trying to reel it in. I just thought he was stuck on weeds. And I ended up snapping my rod, and I was all mad. He could tell. He's like, Dad, are you mad? I'm like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. He's like, I got a fish. I'm like, okay, buddy, I got it. He was probably reeling for about 10 minutes. And then like I'm getting all my stuff organized, and I look down, and there's a 5-pound, 6-ounce bass is what I ended up weighing at the boat. He's using a little ultralight rod with like 6-pound test on it. I'm pretty sure that's what's on there. And he reeled it in. He just wore the fish out of 10, 15 minutes of reeling, and it came right up to the boat. I still got, it's like my screensaver on my phone. And he pulled this, I reached down and pulled the fish up, and we were freaking out there. And he got to make that lure and then use it and then catch a fish. And like when I was mad, he was like, Dad, you were mad, but now are you happy? I'm like, oh, dude, I'm thrilled. I was so happy. And it was still one of my favorite, the best fish I've ever caught was him catching that fish on a lure he made. And it was a huge bass. I mean, I've only ever caught one bass bigger than that. So, he was thrilled with that, and so was I.
That's awesome. That's a good story. I think my craziest bass story, and I don't remember how big it was. I could tell he was a little longer than a Home Depot bucket because that's what I put it in. But I was staying at my uncle's cabin, and it was somebody's nephew who had borrowed my rod, and the top section snapped off when he didn't loosen the drag, and he was pulling the line down, so it just snapped. And then I was like, that's fine. So I used it later, and there was a little piece sticking up above one of the what do you call it, the loops?
Yeah, the eyelets.
The eye, the eye.
Yeah.
So right above the eye, probably, I don't know, 2 centimeters, was just sticking up, and it kept cutting my line. And I was like, at some point, I just have to go get another rod, I guess. And I cast, I don't know, maybe it was going to be my last one for that day, and the bass got on. And I'm reeling this thing in for a while, and I finally get it onto the dock, and I think to myself, it's a miracle that this line was not cut. Like, I don't even know how I did that. Yeah, so I wish I could remember how much it weighed. But yeah. So, but that's definitely a fun story. So is he like making his lures a lot?
Oh yeah. They, like I said, they make their own lures, and local kids come in. I let them make their own lures. Anybody that's around that's a kid, I let them come in and make their own fishing lure, because it's a way to give back. And if a kid gets to make their own lure and catch something with it, it's so much more meaningful to them. In fact, I have one kid. His grandpa lived in town right by us, and he brought his grandson at 10 years old. And kid fishes all the time, but he lived in Michigan. And he told me, I looked at the kid, I said, "Hey, you want to make your own lure?" And he goes, "Really? Can I?" I'm like, "Yeah, make one." And so, he made his own lure. He made this pink lure as a twister tail, his 10-inch lure. And, I didn't think much about it. The grandpa comes in the next day. I was, "Hey, seriously, thank you. I only get to see my grandson like 3 times per year. And he really loves fishing, and he really loved that. And he was nonstop talking about it. And he's super excited. He's like, I really appreciate it. That was great." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." 3 months later, it was around Christmas time. He comes back with his dad this time, his dad and his grandpa. And they go, "Hey, check this out. He caught this 36-inch pike out of Lake Eerie because he lives in Michigan, like right by the Lake Eerie side. He caught this 36-inch pike out of Lake Eerie on that lure. And he was like showing me pictures and everything. I was like, "Hey, yeah, you know what? Make another one." And just the excitement that he had, you're like, man, this is it. I mean, the cost on that's not much for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like the materials aren't much. He's making it, but it's about being, I tell my kids all the time, be nice, do the right thing, show kindness to others. And I guess that's a good way to let people know that, you're a Christian, and they see that in the shop a little bit. And it's a good way to just be nice and do the right thing.
Yeah. That's a fun experience. Almost seems like you could have signups for come make your own lures.
Yeah, you're right.
Just have experience. What's your with all the lures you've done? Do you have an opinion on frog lures?
Yeah. I mean, frog lures work great. So the reason we bought the company was this lure is called the Twin Tail. It's basically it's kind of like there's a whole like line of tadpole lures, because I mean, what do fish eat? They eat frogs, they eat tadpoles. If you get something that looks like what they eat and it moves like what they eat, they're going to try and eat it. So we have this, it's got like a body and then 2 little legs off the back. And so it's kind of like an in-between between a tadpole and a frog. And you throw that up on lily pads, or you throw it on those like weed beds, and you find little holes, and you just jerk it across the top and just let it fall into those holes. And you can catch so many fish that way. My cousin caught his biggest fish of his life that way. That's why we ended up looking for those lures again. And that's how we found the company, was that. And I have frog. I don't make the frog lures. I have molds for them. I make them for myself because they work so well. It's just hard to make them profitably with how we do things, because we hand pour everything. So I'll make them for myself, and I catch a ton of fish on them.
Very cool. Is there anything about the company that you want to mention?
People can check it out. If anybody, this is one of the craziest things, is there's the ugliest colors. Here's something that people don't know about fishing. Everybody is all about color. If anybody used like the 3-hook purple worms when they were a kid or something like that, that was Delong. That's what Delong started. And actually, Delong and Cream were neighbors, and people still know Cream. He's still out there too. But there's like a brown with a gray belly worm. It's only guys over the age of 65 even buy it, because it's the ugliest, nastiest color. It doesn't look good on social media. Nobody wants to buy it, but guys over the age of 65 buy it constantly. And I've taken it out, and it is the best color to use, is the ugliest color. That brown with a gray belly, nothing flashy, but that's what works. And, it's a cool company. If people want to check it out, if they like fishing, check out the Delong Lures. And if they like hunting, if they're on Facebook, they can check me out, or they can look at our page, Rack Junkies. We post content on there all the time if people want to check it out.
Very cool. Is there anything else you want to add before we end?
I'll just say this, from the time I was a kid, my grandma, she would sit there and she'd read us Bible verses and teach us how to shoot. My grandpa would teach us lessons in the woods, and that impacted me to this day, and shaped who I was. And looking back on it, I'm glad that I'm able to offer that to my kids. And as much as we can help others that aren't just our kids, but kids around us. I've watched a bunch of kids on our property shoot their first deer, and get to see that, and it's a lasting impact when you get to take a kid out in the woods hunting, because most people don't have the resources or the time or the knowledge to hunt. And so I just like to see it when people do that. We try to highlight that stuff.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for tuning in. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And if you want to join the adventure, you can pick yourself up a nice hat or a camping coffee mug and brew yourself some coffee right above a nice little fire at greatoutdoorspodcast.com. Oh, kind of grainy.